Well, hello everybody, welcome to Review is Red. Today we're talking about Slaine, Warrior Beyond Time by 2000 AD. It's written by Pat Mills and illustrated by Dylan Powers and Glenn Farby. So, 2000 AD has several famous characters, Judge Dredd, ABC Warriors and all, and Slaine is one of them. Now, Slaine is an Irish king. I think they put that he was the first Irish king in the lore of these books. And he's ritually killed, and then through the goddess of nature and all, he's sent to beyond time to do her will. So this compilation book which I got is a compilation of two series. One is Slaine Demon Killer, which is the goddess sending Slaine forward in time to Boudica's revolt in England. He's bolstering her revolt. The second one is Treasures of Britain, where Slaine is sent forward towards the times of Arthurian England, and what happens there is he's finding the 13 treasures to revive King Arthur and basically restore the land of Britain. So that's what the two stories are about. Now, just to note, Slaine is, to me at least, an M16 kind of book. It involves nudity, cursing, blood, gore, and all of that. So just to warn for this is not a book that you will give to your 13-year-old, I believe. Just to note before I go forward, so let's first go into the cons of the book. Now, the first con about the book is, this is weird to say, but I just say now that I actually love the art of Slaine, Warrior Beyond Time. But this is the first time ever that the art is so good that actually inconsistencies in art actually are a bit glaring. It doesn't happen a lot in the book, but it's just there. First thing, of course, is that you look at this and you see Slaine. Alright, he has short hair and then his axe and everything. Then you open the book and there's Slaine right there. He has long hair. Alright, that's one of the instant things. Another few to note is like when they talk about Slaine's wife. So as you can see right here, she has black hair, she's dark skinned, but later on in the story, see that she is fair skinned and blonde hair. And of course, the last one of the other ones is the ones that I can remember, and again, they don't feature in many. Is of course you got Uko's wizard hat here, which is pointy, and over here it's just a little short piece. So again, but just to be fair, because I'm going to highly praise the art, that's for sure, and I just noticed its inconsistencies. I feel it'd be unfair not to point it out. So okay, so there's some inconsistent art there. The second thing is the second story, Treasures of Britain, is to me not as good as the first story, which is Demon Killer. Alright, and that's for several reasons. One, Demon Killer is Slaine is brought forward to Boudica's revolt, but it's still a Slaine story. It's Slaine with the warp spasms and everything like that, and it's basically Slaine evolved in a story of Boudica's revolt. Whereas for the Treasures of Britain, alright, it's basically Arthur's story. Alright, even though Arthur's not alive, but is Slaine just going along for the ride. So the focus is definitely not on Slaine, which is a very interesting character in my view, as a superhero warrior. The thing is that, of course, when you start off with such a good story, then you go to the back, it's not as satisfying. Although, again, I must state, Treasures of Britain is still a good story. We're very competent, definitely. The other thing about Treasures of Britain, unlike Demon Killer, is the enemy that they have. This character here, which is the Emperor of the Katral, I believe. His name is Gunding, and he's the emperor of this elder race, like in Cthulhu mythos. And the thing about him is he's this powerful creature that has given up the pleasures of the flesh, literally decapitating himself, inventing himself a body like that, which is just pure intelligence. And he's really powerful, and the way he dies at the end is, I gotta say, unsatisfying for me. So I'm not going to spoil it for you, but to me it was unsatisfying. And the last thing, of course, is in the Treasures of Britain, there is a religious aspect to it, whereby in both stories they do take that the goddess of nature is a real religion in the Slaine books. But the second one, Guinevere is taken to be a priestess of the Cathral without herself, her human side at least, knowing it. And she's purporting the new Christian religion, which is actually a tool used by the Cathral to basically corrupt Arthur. So if you're religious and that affects your decision on the book, I would just stay out there right now. And as you can see, most of my criticism comes with Treasures of Britain and not Demon Killer, which is a very good story in my view. Very, very well done. But again, I must state that Treasures of Britain is still a very competent story. It has kinks in it, but still good. So with that, as you can see, it's not many flaws in this book. So let's go into the many pros of this book. So the first thing that's the pro of this book is definitely the art style. It is freaking amazing, and the art for this book is basically what the Death Dealer comics want it to be. Alright, I'll put a link below to my Death Dealer review below. But the point is that Frank Frazetta's art, the guy who started with the posters for Death Dealer, which actually spawned the comics, is very similar to this style of art, which is very stylized. To give you an example, like this picture right here, Frank Frazetta's style of art is very stylized yet realistic, and I mean that in that the details of the bodies drawn by these similar kind of artists is that, you know, it's realistic in that the striations of the body, the musculature and everything is realistic. But, and I say it's fantasy, like, because everybody in the world in this book, unless they are meant to be ugly, are basically bodybuilders or fitness models. You know, everybody has a six-pack. Every lady has humongous boobs and a great toned body, and that's why I use the word stylized for it. All right, but the thing about the Frazetta style is also one thing, which is its amazing detail. One of the great things about the art in Slaine, for example, is the expressions you can get from the art. You know, like this picture right here, look, you can tell exactly how he's feeling just by looking at the picture, whereas some comics, you know, there's lack of detail and they need to use the words and everything to explain. In this book, the expressions, more can be said with just looking at the pictures sometimes than with the text bubbles, which might cover good details. On top of that, to give you that stylized feel of how great this art is, alright, and the amount of detail, just look at this art here, you know, the body, the amount of shadows and contrast and everything. If you show it to a doctor, I think, you know, it might not be 100% correct, but at the same time, it's a great depiction of the human body. And so the art style, like I said, is stylized, realistic. It's very eye-catching. As you can see with the Demon Killer, the background is all greens, blues, and reds. So Demon Killer is more like an action movie. It catches your eye, it drags you in, and the story just follows up on that. Whereas in Treasures of Britain, very much it's a more darker, brooding movie. At the same time, it's a dark action movie, basically, as you can see, with a darker style, with more shadow contrast and all. But both art styles are different, alright? But at the same time, they're beautiful. Although I personally prefer the one from Demon Killer, but I gotta say that details for Treasures of Britain is also very good, especially if you look at Lancelot right here. You can see how like I said, again, stylized musculature is amazing amount of detail in that. I mean, these are the kind of pictures that people will put on walls to inspire themselves to work out to. So, again, great artwork. Another great thing about the Slaine comic is that at the start of the book, they actually give you the backstory of Slaine, you know, so that you don't need to have read, you know, Slaine, the Horn God, the comics from 2000 AD and everything to actually understand what's going on. You know, Uko here, as you can see, he's supposed to be telling the story of Slaine, and he gives you the backstory. So there's none of that backstory problems, which you won't understand the character as much because you get the history of it at the start of the book. Meaning there's no line questions like who is this character and what does he do and what's he about and all of that. Which I think is a very good idea for these kind of books to get you invested in the character. And on the point from a history point of view, I really like the idea that Pat Mills decided to follow history even at the end of all these stories. I mean, this is a fantasy world, and he could easily have changed the history but he decided not to. He follows the history of our Earth, meaning that at the end, Boudica's revolt still fails, and this is no spoiler, by the way. From the start, they already put it quite clearly of the goddess's intent, and for Treasures of Britain, the Saxons will still conquer England. But yet he manages to weave his tale in there, which is really interesting because he plays on the machinations, what's happening behind the scenes, so to speak. Like in Demon Killer, it's the demons are trying to cause the rise of their demons in our world, where so Slaine has stopped that and yet kept Celtic pride up, is still in the world. And also another historical note is that many points you can tell that Pat Mills reads a lot of history books, because in many points it's actually very funny that Slaine will be standing there and Ukko will point out things like the gladius is a much better weapon for fighting, and that's why the Romans were so successful at war than Slaine's big axe over here. There are good history bits. You actually learn things when you read this book, so I mean that's another plus. And historical points aside, the other great point of this book was of course the characters. The main one being, of course, Slaine, the Horn God himself. Slaine is a standard trope, badass character. He talks the talk and he walks the walk. He can take a beating and he can give a beating, that's for sure. But yet, there is many facets to Slaine that I really like, is that it's not just the boring superhero. Because, he has flaws, such as with Slaine, the issue is sometimes, he's always so successful at fighting that he usually just charges in, and it takes Ukko, the dwarf, the little guy that you see following Slaine about, to kind of remind Slaine that there are other ways to do it. Ukko is a interesting character in that he's a really bad person, alright, but yet he is at the same time the brains sometimes of the operation, where he would give Slaine ideas beyond just fighting. But yet both of them have their goods and bads. So there's a multi-dimensional characters to a lot of the characters in this book. Even to the great story of Guinevere, where she is like a dual personality due to the demonic presence in her. And of course the most important points for me in any story is plot holes. And like I said, for a book that still follows history, alright, this book has very little plot holes. Yes, of course, I got to say that Treasures of Britain definitely has a lot more plot holes than Demon Killer. Alright, if you really want to look into it. But at the end of the day, when the story ends, everything ties together. Other than a few points, many times the way the problems are solved, you don't make you roll your eyes, like in certain books like the Death Dealer comics and all that, where you see what happens and you just go, why didn't he just do that? In these books, it all ties together and usually is well explained. So in conclusion, Slaine Warrior Beyond Time is a excellent little, rather not little, actually it's quite a big book. It's excellent story, excellent compilation. Both stories are good. Alright, of course, like I said, I prefer Demon Killer. But you can tell the good thing about the book is Pat Mills really cares about the character, how the character develops and everything. And because it's one writer, unlike so many other stories where you got different writers even writing in between issues, the character is consistent. The character of Slaine is consistent throughout both stories, and his adventures actually adds to him rather than takes away. So again, great book. I feel it's a must buy and a must read for people, especially who like this type of art and cool characters. So to end, basically I'll just use the line that Slaine uses. I think it not many, and thank you very much. Till next word.